Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming to our webinar on the hiring outlook for library and information science professionals and for professionals in the information fields writ large. We're so excited to have you here. I am Denise Agosto, professor in the College of Computing Informatics at Drexel and director of our library and information science program. I'm also admitting people as I'm speaking into the webinar. We have three guests today. I'm so excited. We have Deb Morley, who is the director of the Wolfgram Memorial Library at Widener University. Welcome. We have Matthew Lyons, who is our university archivist at Drexel. And we have Annie Norman, who is the state librarian at Delaware Libraries. So thank you, everybody. We're interested in hearing anything that you'd like to tell us about the current situation at your local institution, or also your views on the information fields on a broader scale, how they've been affected by the current crisis, what you see as steps moving forward in your organization, and any suggestions you might have for our students who are interested in looking for new jobs in the field. In truth, though, we're just so happy that you're here. We'll be delighted to hear anything you have to say. And also after, we'd like to hear some questions from our webinar participants. I am going to mute though, but so first we have Deb Morley. Welcome.
Thank you, Denise. Thank you so much for the invitation. Very happy to be here this afternoon. Welcome, everybody. As Denise mentioned, I'm the library director at the Wolfgram Memorial Library. I am not standing out front of the library. That's a backdrop, but that's our building. We're located in Chester, Pennsylvania, which is about 20 miles south of Philadelphia. So like so many institutions, we had the very abrupt departure from our campus in mid-March. It was very abrupt. I mean, we went from having a kind of a theoretical conversation about what would be required for library faculty and staff to work from home to 2 days later having an announcement from our provost that the students were going to be needing to move out of the residence halls by the end of the weekend, and classes would be suspended for about 5 days, and then they would resume completely online. Now, we were lucky in a sense that we were one of the institutions that already had our spring break. I know that this landed while some folks were, midstream in break, and that some students haven't even been back since the break. So while it was abrupt, students were there, they emptied their dorms, and we didn't really miss a beat in terms of doing what we could do and moving all of our services, or those that we could, into a virtual kind of online environment. Wolfgram Memorial Library is a library that it still has a reference desk. I know a lot of libraries have sort of done away with reference desks or combined to a single service point. We would like to combine to a single service point. One thing maybe you can't see from the picture, but our building is a triangle. And yes, 3 sides. So it really presents some architectural challenges because of people enter through kind of a very narrow pin in the front of the building, and where the circulation areas are, you can't really see back into the back part of the library. So to make a long story short, though, one of the silver linings of this is that we pretty much have managed to merge into a single service point, even though it's virtual. We have the library staff as the first tier of support, and then doing escalation to librarians as needed. So that's been interesting. It'll be interesting when we need to go back to the building, what we're able to continue going forward in that regard. The librarians have been doing a lot of direct work in supporting the faculty and getting classes online, helping them find materials, in that 48 hours before we left, if there were course reserves. We did some digitization to get some things online, or find substitute materials. We still had quite a few faculty that would put maybe DVDs online. And so the librarians work really and continue to work closely with the faculty. They've been More and more of them have been embedded in the course management system. We use Canvas, and that had always been an option to have a librarian role. Some faculty in the past had taken advantage of that, many had not, and so we've had a big uptake in interest in having the librarian be embedded in the online class. There were other things we obviously had to halt, circulation of any tangible materials. We suspended interlibrary loan for about 2 weeks, and then for anybody who's familiar with Iliad, you may know that anytime that computer gets moved, it seems to be very persnickety around its IP address and just all that's required to get that service working. And so I was very pleased that our IT group helped us, and we were able to resume partial ILL services, obviously only electronic journal articles, book chapters, and dissertations that our licenses allow us, that permit that type of loaning. So no loaning or borrowing of books. I think those are kind of the highlights of like where we landed, and that's where we've been for about 2 months. Now we're in a more awkward stage as we begin to talk about what does coming back look like, and when might we look at coming back. Before I go there, I want to say though that I'm so proud of the staff and faculty of our library. They have characteristics that sometimes aren't always attributed to long-term library employees, of agility and adaptability, and they have really stepped over to give others opportunities. One of my goals was to make sure that everyone stayed busy, and that really required us, being willing to sort of share the load of what needed to get done. It's again, going back to silver linings, it's provided incredible cross-training. We've had some of our circulation staff have been helping out in the university archives, getting some experience with tagging Flickr images and working on some other projects. So those have all been great things. But going back to the challenge of the fall, not knowing exactly when we will return, or whether it's pretty likely it will not be the full student body coming back at any one time, and that we will need to have masks and social distancing. And I think that we have a pretty good handle on our ability to be able to do maybe some curbside services. But quite honestly, the idea of throwing the doors of the library open as a study space is pretty terrifying to most of my staff, understandably. And so we're beginning to kind of work through that, and in the same way as some of the committees on our campus are talking about what will classroom spaces look like, how will we be able to have sort of 6 feet apart. Those of you who work in libraries know that anywhere you put the furniture, the patrons will move the furniture. So the plexiglass, minimizing the hand-to-hand transactions. So we're still in a stage very much of exploring, what we're doing there. I want to be cognizant of the time here and not go too much longer. I do want to say a couple things that what's changed for me. And one of the big challenges as the director is how to continue to maintain a feeling of a single organization, how to bring people together. And so we've done that in a couple of ways. I've asked, there's a lot that happens informally, right? There's the staff lounge, there's you learn what others are doing through the water cooler conversations. And so I've asked each one of my unit heads to take a day of the week and to do a brief email of here's what's happening in my unit. I think that's been very helpful. I start off every week with an email to all the staff, and I end the week with an email to all the staff. Some are sort of updates of things that are happening in library administration. Some I hope are more inspirational. My assistant and I have had coffees. So we've done small groups in Zoom, which has been hugely popular, completely social. Just, you know, my assistant has really ran with that, just checking in. She's been there for 30 years, so she knows everybody, their kids' names, but that's been a big challenge, how to still feel like a single unit and make sure that nobody's, you know, kind of too off on their own. So building teamwork virtually, I think, is a area of growth continuing for me. In terms of what's happening, you know, in the job market, and I think, you know, I would say for those of you that are job hunting or soon to be job hunting, don't be discouraged. I've been surprised at how many jobs I continue to see posted. There's definitely a hiring freeze in most of our institutions, but that will not last forever. And I think that, you know, once we head into fall, that there will be more opportunities. And I get it that most people really want a paying job, but there are very many volunteer opportunities, professional development ways that you can continue to expand your skill and really hone on what it is that, where areas you may want to develop. And the final thing I just want to say in that area is this next job may not be your dream job, right? It may be a stepping stone. And some of the most rewarding experiences I've had have been stepping stones. In fact, one of my personal secrets is that my whole career has been a set of stepping stones. So I'll just stop there, and I'm happy to take questions later. So thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Very interesting. I know we do have questions. Would you guys rather hold them, or would you rather take 5 minutes to get some questions now? Any opinions?
Whatever you think will work best.
Matthew, what'd you say?
I'm sorry, I was just going to say some of the questions may relate to more than one presenter, so I would say hold them. Yeah.
Okay, that's a good segue then into Matthew.
Okay, well, thank you, Denise, and thank you, everybody, for being here on Friday afternoon. First of all, as Denise said earlier, I'm the University Archivist at Drexel University. I've been in this position for just about 4 years, and actually for the first stretch of that, Deb was my supervisor. So it's nice to reconnect with her in this panel. And before I was at Drexel, I was an archivist at the Historical Society of Pennsylvania for about 15 years in Center City, Philadelphia. So I can speak to both the academic context as well as independent nonprofit type of organization. And I'm going to be talking both about how our unit, Drexel University Archives, has been dealing with the pandemic situation, and then offering some thoughts and advice, particularly for students who are looking for work in an archives-related position. Although, you know, some of what I say hopefully will be of more broader relevance. Drexel University Archives, first of all, it's a small department within Drexel University Libraries. Currently, we have 3 full-time permanent staff, including myself, as well as 1 part-time project person. It's a very, I would say it's a pretty close-knit group. We have a very good rapport among the 4 of us, and that has certainly been helpful in this period. We have been working remotely since March 16th, so just over 2 months. We did have a little bit of preparation. You know, we saw this coming to some degree, and so we started, you know, moving some key files online and things like this. And I would say that we were fairly quickly able to establish a pretty good working routine. We set up a system of daily email check-ins and other ways to kind of maintain a good connection among ourselves, as well as regular contact with other people in the libraries. It's obviously been challenging. I mean, we have, as an archives, we rely pretty heavily on our physical collections, and we have not had any access to our physical collections at all for 2 months. However, we have had access to most of our digital collections and our files. And so, we've been able to keep doing a fair amount of what we were doing before. We've been able to continue offering reference services on a limited basis. There's been, some continued, activity in terms of people within and outside the university asking us for information. A lot of questions, particularly at the beginning, a lot of questions about, for example, the 1918 flu and how that affected Drexel. And that's some, information we were able to pull out of old yearbooks and things like that. I would say that in general, our activities over this period kind of fall into two categories. There's things that are kind of continuation of stuff we were doing before, and then new activities. Things that we've been continuing in addition to reference include, putting more of our digital materials online. A lot of stuff in our holdings has been digitized, but had not yet been made available online. And so we've kind of speeded that up of, identifying high demand collection materials such as yearbooks, such as student newspapers, and accelerating the pace of making those available online. And then, a lot of kind of back-end tasks such as metadata cleanup, and we've been reviewing and revamping pages on our website. So, various sort of administrative things like that. And the new activities, well, one thing is we, like many archives, we initiated a project to document how our institution has responded to, and just how people in the Drexel community have been experiencing the pandemic, starting with just archiving and preserving university bulletins and web pages and so on. And we're gearing up to launch a more of an active collecting project to document people's personal experiences and just ways that they may reflect on the situation. We've also been trying to look more in a focused way at how we can support online instruction, since obviously that's something where a lot of faculty have had to adapt quickly, and in some cases are looking for help and support in terms of how to make changes in what they can offer to students. And we've also been trying to get better at training people remotely. I mean, one of the things that that was kind of unfortunate about the shift 2 months ago is that we had 2 student workers, both of whom were doing great stuff, but neither of them had been trained to do online work, and so we had to let them go. Now they were both work studies, so they were continuing to get their support, but we weren't able to benefit from their labor. So that's something we're trying to, been working to actually cross-train another library staff person in using our archive space system, where we have collections data stored, and some other systems, because certainly that's something that we're going to need to be addressing in the future. Okay, so then I want to just quick offer a few thoughts about job search, and I want to start by echoing Deb's point that things may look fairly bleak now, but I do think things are going to get better. I mean, frankly, archives is an area where in the best of times there's not a whole lot of jobs, and so you kind of have to be patient and be flexible. And but I do think that the difficulties that we're facing now, I've seen a lot of ups and downs in the job market for archivists over the last couple of decades, and I do think things are going to get better again. So just 3 quick points I'd like to make in this area. First of all, I think it's, if at all possible, it's very important to try to get some kind of practical experience, which could mean, practicums, internships, using the capstone project program that CCI has, volunteerships, anything that you can do to get actual experience working with collections and systems and the kinds of activities that people in archives and special collections do. That's, speaking as somebody who's been involved in hiring a lot of people and a lot of new people, that's one of the first things that I look at. What kind of experience do people have? The second thing is be flexible. Don't be too limited in terms of what you're looking for, either in terms of particular type of position or particular type of institution. Sometimes people come in and assume that you only want to look at permanent positions. I started out in a grant-funded position, which then transitioned into a permanent job. So I think that can be a very effective way to get into the field. If you have the ability to relocate, obviously that increases your options because there may be opportunities in another city or another part of the country. But we have a lot of institutions, historical and cultural institutions in this region. So it's also, there's also a lot of potential. People often move from one institution to another, as I did. And then the third thing is, I would really encourage people as the opportunity presents itself to get involved in professional organizations and events. After I finish talking, I'm going to put on the chat a list of some of the archives-related organizations that are active in this area. And we're fortunate to have a number of really active ones. I mean, the Delaware Valley Archivist Group, the Mid-Atlantic Regional Archives Conference, and the Philadelphia Area Consortium of Special Collections Libraries, which is it's a consortium of institutions, but also has some services for individuals to some extent. And I don't know exactly what the schedule is going to be, but a lot of places, including these kind of organizations, are looking at shifting events to an online format, whether it's webinars like this or informal kinds of get-togethers. But one way or another, these organizations can be ways to both meet other people and learn about institutions and what they're doing, and also just get a sense about what are some of the issues and the trends that are going on in the field. Also, some of these organizations have services specifically geared toward new and aspiring professionals. So the Delaware Valley Archivists Group, for example, has a service that offers resume reviews and opportunities to practice doing job interviews. AmeriCorps has a mentoring program for new professionals. So these are really things that can be very helpful, especially if you're feeling pretty isolated. So I think I should close there. I've probably gone a little bit over, and happy to take questions later. So thanks.
Great, fantastic, thank you. And now we have Annie.
Thank you, Denise. I'm delighted to be here today, to be back at Drexel, so to speak. I graduated from Drexel back in the 90s and have been back a couple times to present at classes and such. But it's great to be here. So when I was attending Drexel back in the 90s, the big issue was the internet. How is that going to impact the profession? And here we are today with COVID, and it's even more scary to me. It's scarier than the thought of the internet back there, because it's just so abrupt. And so in Delaware, all the libraries, they closed, all the public libraries closed very abruptly. And even worse, they were designated non-essential, which was really upsetting after all the years of hard work that we put in together. And it's a very collaborative community, and to be designated non-essential is pretty devastating. Although there's also the, of course, big issue of safety. And so since then, I mean, right away, we started ramping up all of the online services. And so I am dividing them pretty firmly into virtual services and more physical services, and saying, all right, so maybe the physical services aren't essential, but the online services certainly are. One service that I'm lumping in with that is the parking lot wireless, the library parking lot wireless. And while we're being called non-essential, we had all the IT staff running around the state beefing up that wireless. They installed equipment in every library parking lot in the state, and that's pretty essential. We were also really, really lucky that we had just kind of gotten online registration working. We have a single catalog statewide, and we had just gotten online registration, so we could kind of announce that, get a library card. And we also were just launching Hoopla, so it was a new service with lots of e-content. So that was great. And some of the other, we were also featuring Dolly Parton's Imagination Library for the preschoolers. And the libraries were great at jumping into virtual performances and programs and moving all of those programs online. It's just amazing what they did with that. And we set up, we already had a statewide calendar by library, but we set up a separate instance of that was for virtual library programs. And so, of course, trying to convince the libraries, okay, you don't have to set up as many as you do when you're trying to keep your building busy. When you're online, you're all sharing, and we've got almost 300 programs scheduled in June. It's a little too much. But anyway, so the virtual is really incredible. So libraries are included in phase 1, which in Delaware is supposed to start June 1st. They've been kind of coordinating together to be able to launch curbside checkout, but it looks like in phase 1, they could also actually open, but they're by no means ready to do that, even partially. And what we found is that it was really rapid demobilizing, but it takes a lot more to remobilize and get like delivery and everything up and running again. The library staff also took a lot of advantage of professional development, which we try to push, and they take advantage of it. We do fund it. We'll pay for any webinar that on libraries that's out there nationally. But the numbers in professional development, it's just astronomical. It's gone through the roof. So they've been making really good use of their time. So I was asked to talk about public libraries as far as jobs in public libraries, but I also want to throw in a plug for state library agencies, because that's where I work. I'm the state librarian. And so for the public libraries, if you're not already, I encourage you to join your library association in your state, or maybe in multiple states, if you don't mind moving around. That's a way to kind of get your foot in the door, to learn the culture, to get connected. So definitely join your library associations. They also have like job sites on the web pages. The Delaware Library Association has a career link, although I didn't see actually anything posted there right now. As far as public libraries in Delaware, Newcastle County by far pays the best. So if you're really looking for a good salary and benefits, that's the place to apply. But even if you, like some of the independent libraries, about half of our public libraries are 501c3s, governing boards. They do get money from both the state and the county, but it's not as much as the actual county or municipal libraries. And so they struggle with money a little more, but it's, you know, if you're just starting out, it's a good place to get your foot in the door and get some experience really quickly. Right before I got on this call, I was sitting in the governor's budget or governor's press conference where they were talking about the budget, and you know, we're wondering what's going to happen ourselves. He says, well, his objective is to keep everyone hired. So, you know, at least that. Back in 2008, the state employees, we were cut 8%, which we did get it back. I've heard in Michigan, all the state employees are being furloughed like 1 day a week for months. It's really dire there, but you know, it's not a great time to be looking for jobs, I've got to admit. So if you have a job, keep it. Just hang on to it. And as I say, I think it will get better. It should recover more quickly than it did before, but it may take a while. All right, let's see. So what else? Mention the state library agency. So there's a state. I'm surprised how many people don't know what a state library agency is, but then I had no idea what it was when I applied. So, you know, it's not really a big surprise. But there's a state library agency in each state, and it manages the federal funds that come from the Federal Institute for Museum and Library Services. They provide LSTA, which is Library Services and Technology Act funds, to each state, which are either distributed to the libraries or invested on behalf of the libraries. Our mission, and the state library agencies in various states, they might fall in different places in state government. Sometimes it's under Department of Education. In Delaware, we're under the Department of State, which is fantastic. It's been a great place to be. And sometimes it includes archives and museums. In Delaware, there's 3 of us. There's a state archivist and the head of museums. There's 3 of us, but we're kind of sister agencies. And but our main mission for us is library development. We help libraries evolve. So in Delaware, we not only manage, but we fund all of the technologies in public libraries. So we have a statewide catalog. We provide all the PCs, and our staff even go on site to manage all of their public library technologies. We started maker spaces for them, all that sort of thing. Less than half of my positions, though, are state employees. So the big trend that I've seen since I've been there, which has been a long time, and this is an earlier downturn in the economy, they froze positions, and they actually, I lost 1/3 of my positions and have never gotten them back. So what the trend is, instead of developing state positions where there's benefits and all those nice things, it's a lot cheaper for entities to just hire contractors. And that's what the trend became. Because I said, I need more IT staff. They're like, just hire contractors. So we work with like employment agencies that are on state contract. of various sorts. And we also just issue contracts for various, so some of them are IT, we have graphic designers, but also librarians. So some of our contractors are librarians. In fact, one of them is our head of reference, head of virtual reference, and she lives in Washington State. And we have a software expert. She had worked, she's also a librarian, and she had worked for Cersei Dynex. And well, I guess she worked for Cersei, and then when Cersei Dynex merged and they were gonna relocate, she didn't wanna move, nor did she wanna move to Delaware. So anyway, she lives in Tennessee, but she's the software expert for our catalog and keeps us out of trouble, saves us a lot. So that is a possibility, is to think about being a contractor. And, you know, depending on where you are in your career, you would need to be self-directed, you would need to be pretty creative, you would, you know, very responsible to be able to do that sort of thing. But it is, it leads to consulting, and consultants at some levels are making lots of money. So the other thought, and we actually do have some positions here, is AmeriCorps Vistas. We have, we've been authorized for up to 10 positions recently. We're currently posting 3 positions. Now, AmeriCorps Vistas, of course, earn a poverty rate that is intentional, based on what they do, because they're supposed to experience what poverty is like, and their mission is to improve that. But if you don't have a job and you need one, a poverty salary is better than no salary. And we have had a number of not only librarians, but also librarians who have gone through those positions. We had one that was with us for a year, and he just got a position with a large urban library system, which is one of the well-known systems. So that's, you know, that was a good avenue. And we currently have, I was checking with my head of social innovation. She says we have posting for illiteracy, telehealth, and emerging tech. So those are 3 AmeriCorps positions that are currently posted that would be opportunities. And it looks great on a resume and is a great experience. They provide training and can lead to lots of other opportunities. So hopefully I haven't talked too long.
Great, thank you. It was fantastic. It's really interesting to get the 3 different perspectives. We've had a couple questions come in the chat while you were talking. Let's see, Deb, any suggestions or ideas where people can find volunteer opportunities? You're still muted, I think.
Thank you. I would say that, you know, there's a couple of routes to go with that. I think both my speaker colleagues talked a little bit about professional organizations, and by getting on some of the email lists for these organizations and becoming a member, there are often, many times, volunteer opportunities, you know, posted there. I don't know that everybody would be receptive to cold calling, but I have been in a situation where you know, volunteers have reached out, particularly if there was a special collection or something about the institution that resonated for them, and that, you know, I would say, you know, be bold and go out there. But I think the email lists are probably the best route to go for the professional groups.
Great, thank you. And the next question is for Matthew. He answered it very well on the chat, but I want to make sure that everybody saw. Somebody, I think it was Jana, asked about positions in archives, specifically where to find listings, and he included a list and then a response back to Jana. So if you're interested in archives positions, you want to look there. Let's see, then for Annie, oh, somebody asked, what's the ILS used in Delaware libraries?
Yeah, it is Circe Dynex.
It is.
Yeah.
Great.
Mhm.
And speaking, you had mentioned AmeriCorps. Maggie just posted a link to AmeriCorps job listings. Great. So those are the questions that I wrote down as the three speakers were speaking. Do we have additional questions? Let's see. Here's one from Philip. Hi, I'm an IMLS student. Uh-oh, they're going by too fast here. Let's go back to Philip. At University of Maryland High School. Hello, welcome, Philip. I'm interested in data librarianship and digital archivist positions. I wanted to know what is the job outlook for those positions, suggested listservs and regional advantages. Interesting question. Anybody want to take this one on data librarianship and digital archivist in particular?
I'll jump in to start. My former role was that of Director of Data and Digital Stewardship at Drexel. And, it's an area, when I was saying earlier that there is a job freeze, but I'm seeing jobs posted. Some of the more recent jobs I've seen are data librarianship types of positions. I think that, again, we're in a tough slump right now, but I do think that this is an area of growth. I think there continues to be opportunities. And I wasn't sure I understood the last part of the question in terms of regional advantages, meaning that are there parts of the country that seem to have more opportunities? Is that the...
Philip, any clarification? Yes, that is.
I think it depends. I think, often in your larger metropolitan areas where there are just more universities, and if you're really, though, wanting to get on the cutting edge, I think where we're seeing data librarianship intersect with data science, and that there's a whole new set of job possibilities for folks outside of librarianship. So I think it depends on really what you want to do. But again, I think that within the academic librarian region, this is an area of growth. I don't know if Matthew, you have anything to add to that, given that Drexel is doing more in this area?
I don't know that I really do, Deb. I think, I mean, there's some overlap with my answer to the other question in terms of, so the Delaware Valley Archivist Group listserv is one place to look for listings, but this goes beyond the archival community in terms of types of positions and types of opportunities. So I'm not as familiar with the specific places to check, but I wonder if something like the Digital Library Foundation might be one place to explore. There's a number of different organizations out there.
Yeah, DLF is definitely a good one. And also there's a RDAP, Research Data Archives program, I think. That's a professional development sort of organization for data librarians. There's also ICPSR, which is the kind of social science research institute that's been around since the 60s out of Michigan, University of Michigan. And just checking out their website, they really have a lot of information, both practical, but I think also things that may sort of suggest where there might be jobs, and also they themselves hire data curation curators and librarians to work in that organization.
So we have long needed a data scientist where I am, and I'm just so frustrated because I've tried for years to develop a dashboard, and it's so essential to be able to show value of public libraries. And we were actually interviewing, it was probably January, I was interviewing data scientists from one of our contracting firms, and it's like, no, they weren't working or thinking at a high enough level for what we needed, because it is, the profession hasn't really conquered it yet. I served on the Measures That Matter, the original team for that project, which has been ongoing. But anyway, it's super essential. It's going to be hard. It might be hard to find a position right now, but don't give up. Come see me after this downturn.
Great. That's a lot of where our education is leading, so that's good news for us. Let's see, then Stephen asked about AmeriCorps. I'm wondering if the other two of you have used AmeriCorps hirees. He said that Houston Public Library was considering using AmeriCorps, but wasn't sure what they could have AmeriCorps staff do.
Oh my gosh, we've got so much work for them to do. And mostly what they do for us is develop partnerships. So one of the first ones we had, we were trying to develop a connection with the health community. And boy, she went out, pounded the pavement, and she made so many partnerships. I mean, they're still talking about her, even when, she completed her service, but the work that she did is still lives on. Yeah, there's plenty that they can do, at least in our world.
Fantastic. Let's see. Then we have a question from Claire who said, I'm curious to know what the outlook is for remote work, if it will become more common within the library world. That's a really good question. Anybody?
I think it on that too is, and I know that Deb was saying at the beginning about transitioning to that. And for us, because I said we have some remote people, a lot of our staff do work remotely. And of course, myself, I only live like 10 minutes from the office. So it's easier just to go in because all the technology works there, right? But I was never entirely convinced that it was productive to be remote until now. I've done it for 2 months and it's like, I don't want to go back. I'm sold. And the only thing that we really need to go to the office for is mail. And we're going to move all of that. It's like, it's got to be electronic and, and deliveries. So we've got, people wanting to deliver stuff to us, like, even things like masks, trying to get masks made and stuff. But at least my agency could be almost entirely virtual.
Wow. Deb, I think you were going to say something.
Yeah, I think Annie's absolutely correct. And I think that so many of our organizations have been challenged to really see what we can do. And I think a lot of academic libraries had policies around only professional, non-exempt staff could work remotely because hourly people needed more supervision and this and that. And I think we've just blown up the model, and I think that this is going to lend itself to more hybrid positions. So again, I think it was Matthew who talked about, your willingness to be flexible. And I would say, on your resumes and in your conversations with prospective employers to demonstrate your willingness to work online as well as face-to-face, because now that we've been through this, we're hoping, right, this is a once in a lifetime event, but I think even for inclement weather policies and maybe even summer hours, I think we're going to really be thinking more creatively about how we can just maybe not even have so many people on the road or in the parking lot, or it's just not as necessary as we thought it was.
Wow. Any opinion on this one, Matthew, in the archives world?
Well, broadly, I agree. I mean, I think it's a little bit different in archives in that, as I said before, we rely a lot on our physical collections, and that's not going to go away. But that said, I certainly agree that we've expanded our horizons in terms of what we can do remotely. And, you know, as I said, you know, in our department, we've been just expanding our capacity to train people to work remotely. And so that means that in the future, if somebody contacts us and says, hey, I would like to do an internship or a capstone project, but I'm not in Philadelphia, what can you do? Is that a possibility? Can we do that? It's going to be easier for us to accommodate something like that. And I think that's something that we would try to do if we can, whereas in the past, it's been something we've been much more hesitant about. So there's going to continue to be a need for working on site and working, you know, in archives and in, you know, with actual paper and, you know, other physical materials. But yes, remote work is gonna be become more possible.
Wow, it's an interesting idea. So are there other questions or comments from our participants in the audience? All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody. This was fantastic. We really appreciate. There's a good question, one more. We appreciate your time, and to answer Maggie's question, yes, this webinar will be recorded and posted to our college's YouTube site, our YouTube channel, and available for watching. It will probably be posted Monday or Tuesday after our staff does a little bit of editing and touch up.
And Denise, if I could just say, I would certainly welcome questions. If people have questions later, they're welcome to email me. I'll put my contact information in the chat, and just want to thank you again, and thanks everybody for a really helpful discussion. And I certainly learned stuff too, so thank you.
I'll also add my email, and like Matthew, if folks want to reach out with questions, I'm happy to talk with you. And I do want to say, I think it was Annie mentioned mentorship, or maybe it was Matthew. And I do think that, you know, sometimes it's an awkward thing of how do you find a mentor? And I feel like, you know, for a long time, I tried to find a mentor, and then somewhere along the line, I became a mentor. I actually, through the Pennsylvania Library Association program, serve as a mentor. So happy to have conversations going forward.
Wow, that's fantastic. Thank you. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining us. And I hope everyone has a great Memorial Day weekend.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.